Good evening, goeienaand, fellow South Africans from a cool Brisbane, but it's lovely. The weather's lovely. Now, as every live stream, please feel free to use the side channel. I'll just post the opening message in there. And discuss things between yourselves. I'll join you after the presentation. Okay. Tonight I'll be talking about the direction of South Africa, where it's moving in 10 critical areas. Before the South African government even started expropriating land without compensation, is South Africa destined to become a failed state like Zimbabwe? I think you'll see the answer becomes self-apparent. Let's look at how has South Africa progressed for all its people before and after 1994. Before we look at this video of the last president, Jacob Zuma, singing Shoot the Boer at a recent party gathering. This is the level of their thinking. It's crazy stuff, but here we go.
Sizobatubula ngembamba bazobaleka Sizobatubula ngembamba bazobaleka Ulipul sizokushaya Uzotutulwa Ulipul sizokushaya uzobaleka Sizobatubula bazobaleka Sizobatubula bazobaleka Uliphuno uzokushaya uzobaleka Uliphuno sizokushaya uzobaleka Ikhabhinethi soyidubula izobaleka Ikhabhinethi soyidubula izobaleka Uliphuno sizokushaya uzobale ozani sondelani ninenuwinileyo.
Okay. That's fairly self-explanatory. That sort of language is apparently okay now in political circles in South Africa, and should be very disturbing for anyone who is white. Now let's look at the 10 key areas that affect every South African. Okay. We'll start off with probably one of the most important, which is number one, which is health, and of course the associated witchcraft. Healthcare outside witchcraft was unheard of in South Africa before 1652. The first hospital in South Africa, a temporary tent to care for sick sailors of the Dutch East India Company, afflicted by diseases such as typhoid and scurvy, was started at the Cape of Good Hope in 1652. The hospital was completed by the Dutch East India Company in 1656. In the years that followed, missionaries set up hospitals to help indigenous people across South Africa, and as a direct result, lifespans increased. From the 1800s to the dark and oppressive apartheid era, South Africa, as a direct result of the health services offered the African population, that population exploded. While modern health systems brought into South Africa have seen a dramatic growth in the lifespan of Africans, sadly witchcraft is still practiced in some places like KwaZulu-Natal. Ask any Zulu about the tokolosh, a mystical little creature that kills you while you sleep at night, and you'll understand why their bed is always made on bricks or higher to stop the tokolosh getting to them as they sleep. Now, let's look at post-1994 health. In 2013, it was estimated that vacancy rates for doctors was 56%. They can't get the doctors. And for nurses, 46%. Half the population lives in rural areas, but only 3% of newly qualified doctors take jobs there. They stay in the cities. The rural areas of South Africa face a huge brain drain in medical professionals following 1994. More on that brain drain later. The people most impacted on are the Africans, as this huge shortage of health professionals grows day by day. South Africa has the biggest HIV/AIDS epidemic in the world, with about 10 million people living with HIV. HIV prevalence is high among the general population at 18.9%. An article in South Africa's Sowetan newspaper had reported that at least 28% of African schoolgirls are HIV positive, while only 4% of young boys are infected with the virus in the country. The high percentage of schoolgirls with HIV reflects a huge number of unreported rapes that happen to African children. The emergence of HIV/AIDS coincidentally started to become a major issue in 1994 when the ANC took over governing South Africa. Okay, let's look at number 2, which is education. The earliest European schools in South Africa were established in the Cape Colony in the late 17th century by the Dutch Reformed Church elders committed to biblical instruction, which was necessary for church confirmation. In rural areas, itinerant teachers, or meesters, taught basic literary and math skills. British mission schools proliferated after 1799, when the first members of the London Missionary Society arrived in the Cape Colony. By 1877, some 60% of white school-aged children in Natal were enrolled in school, as were 49% in the Cape Colony. After the Boer War ended in 1902, in the former Afrikaans republics, however, enrollments remained very low, only 12% in the Orange Free State and 8% in the Transvaal, primarily the result of Afrikaner resistance to British education. Enrollments in these republics increased after the government of the Union agreed to the use of Afrikaans in the schools and allowed Afrikaner parents greater control over primary and secondary education. Before 1953, many black people attended schools set up by religious organizations. These schools provided schooling of the same quality that white children received in state schools. Following the Bantu Education Act, number 47 of 1953, the government tightened its control over religious high schools by eliminating almost all financial aid, forcing many churches to sell their schools to the government or close them entirely. Now, let's look what's happened post-1994 with education. In 1997, the government launched its new education system called Curriculum 2005, which would be based on outcome-based education, or OBE. By 2006, this is just 1 year later, it was clear that OBE as a social experiment had failed, and it was quietly shelved. Education in South Africa is governed by 2 national departments, namely the Department of Basic Education, or DBE, which is responsible for primary and secondary schools, and the Department of Higher Education and Training, or DHET, which is responsible for tertiary education and vocational training. Prior to 2009, these two departments were represented in a single Department of Education. An independent study by Stellenbosch University researchers found that undue union influence and critical educational factors, including weak institutional functionality, this is a good one, uneducated teachers, and insufficient learning time were responsible for the poor state of education in South Africa today. South Africa has a high dropout rate due to reasons of poor academic performance, teen pregnancy, and crime. In fact, South Africa's education department is now ranked 140th out of 144 countries. This ranking refers to the World Economic Forum Global Information Technology Report, which exposes the inferior quality of South Africa's education system today. It received a score of only 2.2 out of a possible 7. There are still some very, very fine private schools like Michael House in Balgowan or Hilton College and Gray's College, but they are the exception, not the rule now in South Africa. Okay, number 3, let's look at crime. While crime has always been an issue in South Africa, it is only post-1994 that the situation has got out of control. It was, of course, the apartheid-driven police that kept crime in South Africa at a relatively low level and protected mainly the white community. Let's look at crime post-1994. South Africa now has one of the highest rates of rape in the world, with some 65,000 reported rapes for the year ending in March 2012, or 127.6 per 100,000 people in the country. Now I say reported because it's absolutely clear that probably about 80% of rapes never get reported. So I'd say the rate is a hell of a lot higher. The instance of rape has led the country being referred to as the rape capital of the world. 1 in 3 of the 4,000 women questioned by the Community of Information, Empowerment and Transparency said that they had been raped in the past year. More than 25% of South African men questioned in the survey, published by the Medical Research Council, or MRC, in June 2009, admitted to rape. Of those, nearly half said they had raped more than one person. 3 out of 4 of those who admitted rape indicated that they had attacked for the first time during their teenage years. South Africa has among the highest incidents of child and baby rape in the world. Earlier I mentioned that 28% of African girls in schools already had HIV. One can only wonder what percentage of their encounters were rape, and how many of those were the crazy belief among Africans that rape a virgin and you cure yourself of AIDS. South Africa has the highest murder rate amongst countries with populations of 35 million people or more. The rate of farm murders of whites is over 200 per 100,000, or about 100 times greater than murders in countries like Australia. Many of these murders include the entire family and include extreme forms of torture, both physical and mental. Okay, number 4. Let's look at employment in South Africa. Unemployment in South Africa is worse now for all races than it was when apartheid ended in 1994. The official unemployment rate in 1994, as recorded by Statistics South Africa, was approximately 20%. Let's look at employment post-1994. The most recent quarterly labour force survey reported an increasingly rising unemployment rate to 27.5%, with youth unemployment far higher. A growing percentage of whites make up the unemployed as a direct result of affirmative action. Over 25% of whites now live in poverty in South Africa. Affirmative action has resulted in many unqualified people being placed in positions where they are unable to fill their role. As a direct result, many government departments, in particular, are in absolute chaos. South Africa is projected to have the 6th highest unemployment rate in the world this year, and it is moving into a recession right now. In conclusion, there are a couple of interesting remarks that I'd like to quote. Firstly, Professor Mike Muller, former Director General of Water Affairs, said, "What we have moved to now is ministers decide who they want to bring in as their heads of department. Their motives for doing that are not usually about technical competence. It is more about comfort and trust and sometimes corruption, i.e. collusion." Lulu Johnson, the chairperson of Parliament's Water and Sanitation Portfolio Committee, said, "I don't know how it escaped the DPSA, the fact that you do not have the requisite schools, because in that list of your DDG, you have 2 of them who have just a bare minimum of grade 12. Number 5, let's look at political corruption. The definition of good government is no corruption. Despite bad and racist policies, South Africa blossomed because the white politicians understood this simple fact, and the chance of being caught out made the thought of being involved in corruption too high a price to pay. Okay, let's look at political corruption post-1994. Now, how things have changed. The 2017 Transparency International Corruption Perceptions Index assigned South Africa an index of 43 out of 100, ranking South Africa 71 out of 180 countries. This ranking represents a downward direction change with a drop of 2 points, down from 45 in 2016. Countries with scores below 50, which is South Africa, are believed to have a serious corruption problem. Recent scandals surfacing since 2016 involving former South African President Jacob Zuma have drawn attention to corruption in South Africa. Cyril Ramaphosa, the newly elected South African entrepreneur, has vowed to root out existing corruption and further the development of anti-corruption initiatives. Now, let's have a look at this. Okay. A recent scandal involving the Gupta family and former South African President Jacob Zuma has pushed Zuma out of official office, while resurfacing a long list of corruption complaints against the former president. Complaints against Zuma range from the former leader lavish spending of state funds to the delegation of contracts to businesses with familial connection or close ties. And then there is the 260 million rand Zuma homestead, paid for by the taxpayer. Jacob Zuma grew up in Nakzimala in the Tukela Valley, and he returns regularly to his roots to get away from the pressures of high office. Well, he's no longer in high office, but his home is now a vast presidential homestead of several mansions, a helipad, telecommunication towers, staff quarters, high security fencing, and controlled gateways. The residence can be clearly seen from the side of the road close to the bottom of the valley en route to Kranskop and Greytown. And in this short video that I'll play now, you can see our friends at the EFF, what they get up to. Okay, here the EFF basically take over a fast food business a few days ago. The Braamfontein Smokehouse and Grill Restaurant, linked to Adam Katsavelis, the owner who used the K word on a Greek beach, resulting in this response by the EFF in his business. Here we go.
I
Okay, that was just oopsie. That was just part of the demonstration that took place in his business. Let's continue. Where are we? Yeah, okay. Number 6, illegal immigrants coming into South Africa. Under the National Party government, the state of South Africa had a secure border and illegal immigrants were deported without question. Post-1994 South Africa, Professor Lauren Landau, director of the African Center for Migration and Society at the University of Witwatersrand, said that it is impossible to accurately estimate how many undocumented migrants are currently in South Africa. Anyone who claims to know, he says, are lying. He recommended using census data and the number of foreign-born nationals in South Africa to determine how this demographic has grown. The 1966, let me just pull this up, there we go. The 1966 census revealed that about 1 million people living in South Africa were born outside of the country. The 2011 census revealed that 4.5%, or about 2.3 million of the country's 51.7 million, were born outside of South Africa. This amounts to an increase of 238% over the 15-year period for anyone living in South Africa. The reality is that the number of illegal immigrants is much higher than what they're quoting. Now, have a look at this. This is the road that I went along in 2006. I took that further then. So that was 12 years ago. Now, the photo is taken of the road between Pietersburg in the Limpopo region, north of Gauteng, and Sanin to the west. It's about a 100-kilometer drive, and it is recognized as one of the most dangerous roads in the world today. Cars tend to drive in convoy, and there are many miles of shanties, as you can see, bordering up to the road with illegals, mainly Zimbabwean gangs, loitering by the road, waiting for any opportunity to carjack or steal. Okay. Number 7, a very, very important area, the value of the rand. In the 1960s and the 1970s, the rand used to be at parity with the US dollar. Remember those days? The rand started losing value after the government allowed De Beers to move its huge financial assets to Sweden long before 1994. Let's look at the value of the rand post-1994. The South African Reserve Bank keeps historical records of the rand-dollar exchange rate. On the 3rd of January 1994, the rand was trading at 3 Rand 40 to the dollar. At the time of publishing this report today, it was trading at nearly 15 Rand to the dollar. If you go to the website xe.com, you'll be able to see exactly what has happened to the value of the rand today. When the government start expropriating farmlands without compensation, watch the value of the rand follow the trajectory of the Zimbabwean dollar under Robert Mugabe. In other words, it'll be worth nothing. South Africa has a no-growth economy, and the world recognizes. In fact, it is shrinking as the population grows. This cannot work. And the worst investment you can make in South Africa today is to have your money locked up in a fixed deposit in the bank. The worst. As the rand continues to implode, your fixed deposit loses value. Your best investment as a South African today is to buy gold Kruger rands, which will maintain their intrinsic value based on the US dollar, because gold is based on the US dollar. Kruger rands are also highly portable. Now, let's look at number 8. Food production, very important area. Grains and cereals are South Africa's most important crops, occupying more than 60% of hectares under cultivation in the 1990s. Maize, the country's most important crop, is a dietary staple and a source of livestock feed, as well as an export crop. Government programs, including generous loans and extension services, have been crucial to the country's self-sufficiency in this enterprise. Maize is grown commercially on large farms and on more than 12,000 small farms, primarily in northwest Mpumalanga, in the Free State and KwaZulu-Natal provinces. Maize production generates at least 150,000 jobs in years with good rainfall and uses almost one half of the inputs of the modern agricultural sector. Maize production exceeds 10 million tons in good years, owing to regional drought. In the early 1990s, however, production fell to just over 3 million tons. In 1992, and roughly 5 million tons of maize were imported at a cost of at least $700 million. Both domestic and imported maize was shipped to neighboring countries to help ease the region's impacts of the drought. Now we're talking about pre-1994 here. Below average rainfall in the late 1994 again threatened to reduce maize output in 1995, and officials expected to import some 600,000 tons of maize that year. However, the farming community was vibrant and easily fed the population in most years. Let's look at post-1994. Since 1994, many large farms have been handed over to Africans, and about 90% of these fail to produce anything for the wider population. Imagine how this statistic will impact the general population if expropriation of lands without compensation takes place across South Africa. The agricultural sector contributing about 12% to South Africa's total export earnings in financial year 2016 at a value of $9.2 billion. The main crops exported were citrus, wine, table grapes, and apples. South Africa also exported nuts, pears, corn, wool, sugar, and mohair, to name just a few products. South Africa imported $7 billion in agricultural and food products in financial year 2016, which was at the same level as in financial year 2015. Before 1994, there was seldom need to import food. The major products imported in 2015 were corn, 505 million, rice, 424 million, wheat, $367 million, and chicken cuts and offal, as well as palm oil and soybeans. Now, South Africa is usually a net exporter of corn, but due to a severe drought in the 2015 and 2016 year, which decreased demand by almost 50%, it actually had to import 3 million tons of corn to fulfill local demand. Solomon Makwani has one of these African farms that have been taken over, and the white farmers were compensated. And what happened is this. They have farming machine, which came as part of the deal. And 10 years ago, the South African government bought the land from a white farmer for distribution to disadvantaged black farmers. The goal was to reverse the inequalities of the white minority-ruled era when black people were not allowed to own land. Mokoena and 200 farmers formed a cooperative to manage the land. The former owner grew maize and sunflowers on the fertile land, but in the past decade, Mokoena says the cooperative's machines have been only ever used once. We did plough once in 2007, we never ploughed again, he stated. Mokoena explains the cooperative lacks funds to work the land, to buy seeds, fuel, and fertilizer. The land is now being leased to another farmer who makes money out of it. The rent the cooperative received is just enough to pay the electricity bill. The failure of Mokwena's cooperative is typical of farms which have been handed over to Africans to run. about 90% of the farms distributed to black farmers since the launch of land reform 16 years ago are no longer productive. There are no longer crops grown on them at all. Okay, let's look at number 9. Number 9, electricity and water. This is an interesting one. The electricity grid has not been maintained. Pre-1994, blackouts because of electricity shortage were practically unheard of. Now they are commonplace. Dams have not been upgraded. Pre-1994, no city ever faced a water shortage. Of course, we know what happened in Cape Town. Here in Brisbane, I have not experienced a single blackout caused by any regional electricity issue in over 10 years, even with bad storms. You can rely on your electricity and water purity in Australia. So let's look at post-1994 South Africa. Meanwhile, the population in South Africa has grown exponentially. This includes millions of legal immigrants pouring through the borders to the north. The recent crisis in Cape Town over the water shortage drew worldwide attention. The major dam has not been upgraded since 1994. Despite the population in Cape Town nearly doubling. Just a few more weeks and God knows what would have happened in Cape Town if drinking water had run out. Water quality and shortages are going to get worse and residential areas will be the big losers. I'm going to play you an audio. Okay, here we go. It lasts for about 3 minutes.
In Parliament today. Jeepers, there's some interesting things happening in Parliament at the moment, and the Department of Water and Sanitation appearing before the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee, and no signs of recovery yet from the horrors of Nomvula Mokonyani's ministry. Lindsay.
Good afternoon, John. No, not at all. It just looks like it's going from bad to worse. It certainly is the first time that I've heard that a department is coming to ask Parliament permission to revise what they said they would do, all the promises they made in the budget speech, and that almost 50% of it won't get done this year because they don't have the money to do any of it. They're spending all the money, as you said, mopping up Nomvula Mokonyane's past, all this debt that they've accrued starting this year alone with 2 billion rand that they need to pay bills. And so that's what they're doing with the money, and there will be almost no infrastructure built. And as you know, that's a critical thing when it comes to water in the country.
And it's not just the lack of new infrastructure building, it is the maintenance of old infrastructure and the consequent deterioration in the water quality which is served to the citizens of South Africa from those dilapidated and decaying water infrastructure facilities.
Correct, and ironically, one of these programs put in place to save, you remember the Water Research Commission noted how much water is lost through this, as you said, this ailing infrastructure, and this War on Leaks program that Nomvula Mokonyane initiated about 3 years ago is actually now turning out to be one of the biggest headaches for this department. They've almost spent 600 million rand on this project that there's no budget for. So they are literally stealing from other projects to pay for the War on Leaks, while the acting Director General saying they cannot yet say that they're recovering, all this water loss that the project seems to stop. It is having benefits, but it's not yet paying for itself, if you will. They are now mounting all this irregular expenditure and taking money from all kinds of projects to pay for this. And there's also the ramification of all these angry young graduates that they've employed, because it's not only stemming water leaks, it's about giving young people job opportunities and training them as artisans who are now fuming because they're not getting paid. They don't know whether they'll have a job. It's really, John, it's just an absolute mess. You actually don't know where to begin explaining all the problems that this department is facing.
How angry and frustrated were the parliamentarians across the political board?
Very frustrated, really angry. They had the Deputy Minister was here today, Pamela Tshwete, and I couldn't quite make out whether she was throwing her officials under the bus or trying to come up with an excuse, because actually been, in the department for about 4 years, and she was Mvula Mokonyane's deputy for all that time, and that she's saying that the lack of a permanent DG they've had for in as many years is the problem, because MPs are saying it's just unacceptable that no one is held accountable, that, they were saying it just looks like they're a bunch of incompetent officials. They can't plan, they can't budget, they have no answers for how they fix these problems. They just come repeatedly and say the same thing to MPs, and it just doesn't look like there's any way that they're going to solve all these problems.
Thank you very much, Lindsay Dentlinger of Eyewitness News.
Okay, you can see how chaotic things are getting. Now, there's one more to go, and this is the elephant in the room. And it's number 10, and it's the brain drain, okay? Pre-1994, there was a good balance and supply of highly qualified people living in South Africa, and they had a great lifestyle. This included professionals like professions like health, engineering, mining, farming, justice is a big one, and politics, of course. But what's happened since 1994? Okay, there's been a huge brain drain in South Africa, mainly as a result of the recent radicalization of the political system under the ANC, and more recently, the blatant threats of the EFF. With the policy of expropriation of land without compensation targeting white farmers, this exodus of highly skilled people has increased dramatically. In the last few years, almost 47,000 skilled professionals left South Africa and entered into OECD nations for work. Of the professionals, most were teachers and educational professionals. In fact, there were 17,500 who left South Africa. This is followed by health and life science professionals, which saw some 10,800 individuals leave. The data shows that the UK and Australia, we love you guys, were the biggest gainers of South African skills, with the UK taking in over 18,500 skilled South Africans, followed by Australia taking 13,000. There are very few people coming into South Africa to replace these people, and every loss overseas will impact employment and lifestyle for the population remaining in the country. I mean, that's a no-brainer. So, there are the 10 areas I wanted to cover this evening. There's just one more question I'd ask you. Why have things really gone pear-shaped in South Africa since 1994? This is not about race. It's about integrity and incompetence of the government. The government sadly lacks the ability under the ANC to actually take South Africa forward, and the country is moving into a crisis now. If anyone out there wants to make a racial issue out of this statement, that's their prerogative. I'm not. I'm just stating the facts and putting them before you. It is clear that South Africa will soon join Zimbabwe as a failed state. Okay, with that I'll go to the sidebar and let's see what's happening over there. I would ask you to please watch your language on here, Glenn, okay? I know you get frustrated, but, I want this to be a G-rated video. I don't want to have to put an adult rating on it. Okay, let's keep the language good. Where's your parents' homeland, Carl? Yeah, I agree, Vanessa. Yeah, the Free State apparently is the area that's having the northeastern Free State is apparently the area where most of the farm attacks are happening, from what I can see. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's not people coming across the border from Lesotho, because traditionally they have been quite violent, African tribes there. Yeah, we have a wonderful climate here, Carl. You're so right. I mean, I live in Brisbane, on the which is in southeast Queensland, and about an hour from me is the Gold Coast. I don't know if you've seen photos of the Gold Coast, but all you have to do is Google it, look at the images. It's amazing. Beautiful beaches, miles long. Got to watch my water. Sorry, guys. Yeah, Dawn, that's a very good point. In fact, I'll just add to what you're saying there. I know a little bit about physical gold and silver. I think it was under Nixon, the US dollar was taken off the gold standard. And since then, gold has just exploded in price. I mean, it used to be something like $30 an ounce, I think, in about 1974 when the US went off the gold standard. It's now about 1,200 US dollars an ounce. So think of that as an investment. And the beauty about owning gold is that it is, when you buy gold, you actually have to pay the US dollar value. So if the rand collapses, which I believe it's going to, you still have the security of the value in that gold coin because it's based on US dollars. Yeah, Joe, they do. They do want the whites out, and they're just digging their own grave, but they don't realize that. Yeah, what is the situation with farmland? I'm hearing that you can't give it away now in South Africa. Hi, Beersine. Good to see you. Glenn, what you have to do is you've got to have a member of your family who are actually living in Australia, and it's normally parents or siblings that you can actually then sponsor once you're an Australian citizen. Um, so you've got to get someone first into Australia who settle, um, become an Australian citizen, then under the parent visa they can apply to bring in other members. Not at all, Joe. No, Aussies love South Africans because they know South Africans work really hard. The problem we have, which I have discussed before, is that it's politics. In fact, we had a very disturbing by-election just this week in a place called Wagga Wagga, which is in New South Wales. It's only a state election, but a region, the Wagga Wagga region, has been held by the Liberal Party for 61 years, and they lost it last week to an independent. and that doesn't augur well for the federal election next year. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because there's a growing chance that the Labour Party, supported by the Greens, will actually take power next year. And if that happens, it's going to be much harder for white South Africans to come into the country, because the Greens have this hatred of white South Africans because they see them as racist. I know that's wrong, but that's what they see. Nice area, that, Glenn. You're up early as well. It must be 4:45 your time, Glenn. That's 5 in the morning on Monday, for those who are South Africa. Yeah, I know, it's tragic, Bok. It really is. I mean, look, I know race doesn't matter, but the decline in the living style of whites in South Africa has been absolutely tragic. They are, Vanessa, yeah. Oh, that's cool. So have you got dairy cattle down there, Glenn? What do I do, Joe? I'm retired. I'm an old fart, as the Africans call me in the comments below my videos. I think about 25% of whites are now living in poverty, Dawn. So probably a high percentage of that will be living in camps. Probably hundreds of thousands. We're just being realistic, Jeremy. Yeah, just put it into gold, Vanessa. Gold, Kruger rounds. Yeah, Bok. Yeah, that I am. I'm happy to admit it. Yeah, they certainly are, Dawn. Vanessa, you're obviously in South Africa. I do. I've actually got a Springbok tracksuit top, which I often wear. And in fact, where is it? Here we are. I also have a scarf. And this is from 2003. Rugby Australia. And on the other side, we have, and I love to wear this when South Africa. I love to wear this when the Wallabies play the Springboks. I think KwaZulu-Natal will, Glenn. I really think that KwaZulu-Natal will, because they have got some tremendous farmland. I mean, you know, maize grows beautifully in KwaZulu-Natal. Yeah, I hear what you say, Jeremy, but look, you can't, you're fighting a rising tide, I'm telling you now. Yeah, exactly right, Vanessa. Apparently now, as more and more blacks are battling to get food, they're now actually starting to, fight themselves. Huge numbers of murders happening. Yeah, I wish it would, Vanessa. I really do think the best policy for anyone living in South Africa is just to explore the idea of leaving the country, even if you're not going to do it. But just look at your options, see what you can do. Because if you suddenly have to, at least you've investigated that. Oh, you can certainly buy a farm here, Davy, in Queensland. We're actually going through quite a bad drought at the moment, and there's quite a lot of really nice farmland on offer for sale. Um, what I'd suggest you do is just Google farmland for sale, and something like um, Toowoomba, which is like the city serving the farming area in southern Queensland, and have a look at what's there. I'm sure you'll find lots and lots of farmland. Of course you can, Carl. We'll chuck a shrimp on the barbie for you. Thank you, Jeremy. Absolutely, Mountaineer. Once you've got a degree, and um, once you've got a degree, it certainly makes your chances a whole lot better. Well, there is that Canadian option, which Ty raised in, last weekend in the live stream, and apparently, if you fly to New York or Albany in northern part of New York State, you can get a taxi and cross the border into Canada, um, near the Niagara Falls, apparently. And once you're in Canada, you can then claim refugee status. And once you've done that, um, and anyone can do that, they've got open borders there. Once you've claimed refugee status, you then have to go through the court system and stuff like that. But they look after you. So Canada is a very serious option to look at if you are desperate to get out of South Africa. That is. The only thing about Canada, yeah, that's a good point, Pete. But the only thing about Canada is that it's bloody cold. You know. That's a good question, Vanessa. Um, I, what I'm seeing is that Europe is in a mess now, and I think it's like the Trojan horse. What they've done is they've let in these millions of people, and you saw my video last week where that guy sort of explained how, as a refugee, he could basically do what he wanted and just stuck his thumb up at the police. And some people have said that's a parody, but it's pretty straight on. It's pretty well what happens. Yeah, it is Dawn. Yeah. Okay, just on New Zealand. Okay, now New Zealand is a fantastic place. I mean, if I wasn't in Australia, I'd be moving to New Zealand. And the reason I say that is because New Zealand and Australia have an agreement. So if you're an Australian, you can move to New Zealand and you can settle there, even though you've got an Australian passport. So that once you settle there, you can buy a farm in New Zealand. You can do whatever you like. If you go to New Zealand, the South Island is absolutely magnificent. There are some beautiful parts. The only thing about New Zealand is they have a lot of earthquakes. I mean, Christchurch was completely bombed out by an earthquake about 10 years ago now. And they're still rebuilding it. Yeah. Yeah, and hardworking. That's the same all over Africa. I grew up in a place called Iringa in Tanzania, and I was actually born in Dar es Salaam. And when I went back to Dar in 2016, I was on this 2-month exploration through Africa. The pollution in Dar es Salaam was, you get what they call the Dar es Salaam cough after about a day, because, you know, the pollution is so bad. And it took me weeks to get rid of the cough after I'd left Dar. It is Boersian, yeah. Today is the Swedish election. Fish and chips. That reminds you of Pauline Hanson, Glenn. Actually, we haven't spoken about the One Nation Party, but there is a very conservative party here, which is like the opposite to the Greens, called the One Nation Party, and of course it's called racist and radical and stuff like that, but they would be strong advocates for white South Africans coming across to Australia. There's several areas, Mountaineer. Lots of great areas. I mean, up in what's that area? Harvey Bay area. I know that a lot of farmers grow pecan nuts and things like that. Yeah, it is hardworking. It's going really bad. And you know, the tragedy is that even Serengeti now, I saw Serengeti in 2016, and the Maasai, because they got so many cattle, and the land in Tanzania is just, you know, the erosion is horrific. So what they're now doing is they're starting to go into Serengeti, and if a lion takes one of their cattle, they go and kill the lion. So Serengeti is under full assault right now by the Maasai people. And that's basically the last bastion of nature or the old Africa. Cheers, Glenn. Enjoy your cattle. Someone's raised Panama before, Vernon. They were saying that what you have to do is you have to pay some money to get a visa or permanent residency there. I'm not sure. Yeah, Vanessa, you're right. I think there's going to be an absolute tragedy happening in Africa. Once the whites have left, I think they're going to turn on each other, and it's going to be a disaster. Yeah, you are, Vanessa. Yeah, I think so, Dawn. You know, it is tragic. Um, it is absolutely tragic what's going on there right now. Hardworking, they haven't really been affected at this stage because Pauline Hanson has only got about 4 or 5 seats in Parliament, so she doesn't actually have a lot of, but she does support the Liberal Party or the coalition, so she's a key stone in that coalition government. If she hadn't had the One Nation Party, you'd probably find there's a Labour Party government right now in Australia. How's what made me leave South Africa? I left in 1986 because I just hated what I saw, where I saw South Africa in particular going, and there was a lot of violence, but there was one incident in particular which really just made my mind up. In fact, there were two. They're both awful, so I'll only tell you one because they're shocking. The one that really made up my mind was I stayed in Krugersdorp, and my wife was there in Krugersdorp, and her family were there, and a couple of her family, it was a very big family, a couple of family worked for the local Krugersdorp police station. And what happened was there was a riot going on in a neighboring African shanty. And thousands of Africans were rioting and singing and, had their knobkerries and whatever. And this police van was sent out to go and investigate. And there were 2 young policemen in it. And they drove around this corner, and right in front of them there were these thousands of Africans just rioting, and just a huge number of Africans, and the roads were not great because it was in this African shanty, and they realized that these Africans were coming towards them because they were wanting to try and get to the police, and they turned their vehicle around, their police vehicle around, and the rear fender got caught in a cable, a big cable which was anchored in the ground, and they couldn't move. And these Africans circled around the van, and the really sad part about all this was that they were in direct radio contact with the police station, and they explained to the guys in the police station what had happened. And the next thing, the guys in the police station could hear these Africans hitting the vehicle, and they broke the windscreen, and they pulled these 2 guys out and they necklaced them. And it was just shocking. And while they were still alive, they were screaming and crying for help, and oh God. So that was a thing that really got me going. Yeah, that's right, Desiree. So if you go in there and just claim refugee status, yeah, I think you've got a good chance of getting employment and having a new life. So Vanessa, are you going to stay in South Africa? So you're going back to Europe, Carl? Yeah, I think New Zealand is actually harder to get into than Australia. That's why I advocate that you aim at Australia, because once you've got Australian citizenship, you can move to New Zealand. Carl, do you know what the policy of the Netherlands is towards the Afrikaners? Because they do have Dutch descendants. Take care, Mountaineer. Thanks for joining us. Wow. That's not good, Mr. Punisher. Yeah, yeah, they necklace them. Yeah, I know, it's awful. Cool. So you've basically got access back to Holland then, Carl. Look, what I'll keep doing is posting regular videos, so please just watch out for and please subscribe so that you're notified when I do post videos, because I'm looking at options like that South Australian option that I came across last week. Um, so if I get some good news about refugee status and whatever, or ideas, I'll keep on posting those to you in my videos. Yeah, it's a bit cold and wet in Holland, isn't it? Yeah, that's a good point, Don. Actually, when I started this channel aimed at helping South Africans, um, I only had about 3 or 4 subscribers. I've now got over 1,500, I think, and I'm hoping that we get more and more as we cover more subjects related to migration in South Africa, because that's really where the focus of this channel is. Chell, there are, I would say, well over 1 million South Africans in Australia, well over 1 million. And the main centres for South Africans are Perth is the biggest. In fact, they call Perth, which is in Western Australia, Little South Africa, because just about everyone there is South African, and it's a big, big mining industry in Western Australia. But then Brisbane, where I live, there's a huge South African community here. They live in the western suburbs of northwestern suburbs of Brisbane. And then you've got South Africans in Sydney. You've got a large population there, and in Melbourne, all the major centres basically have South Africans. Wow, I know how cold that can be, Glenn. It's beautifully warm here in Brisbane, but then we are a lot closer to the equator than you are. I've never heard that, House, about South Africans keeping to themselves and taking over. I haven't heard that. I know there's several websites you can go to, Australian websites, where you can interact with South Africans now living in Australia. Well, if you go to New Zealand, question mark, I don't know what your name is. If you go to New Zealand, or you get residency in New Zealand, you can come to Australia because they have this agreement, the two countries. You can actually settle in Australia. I think they're scared, Glenn. I think they're scared. Sure, Peter. Look, let me just see if I can find the video. You guys keep talking and I'll just see what I can find here. Because below this video, I've got all the, the community South African websites, you know, servicing Australian South Africans. Somewhere. The trouble is I've posted so many videos now that finding it is going to be a bit of a problem. Let's look and see. Okay. I'll have to look for that that link and post it underneath this live stream later. I've got so many videos here. I don't want to have them coming on and making a noise as we're on here. No problem, Michelle. Raul, I don't know which continent you live in, which world you live in, but that's all right. Really, Vanessa? Wow. Not the DA. Oh, wow. That's awful, Vanessa. I'm just seeing if I can find these links for people. I did it quite early on in the piece. Let's just have a look at this one. Absolutely, Shell. Of course you can. To get a retirement visa, I think you've got to have over $1 million or something like that in cash. So it's probably, if you got money, it's money you'd have to have overseas and then bring into Australia as part of the arrangement. But yeah, you could certainly set up a business. No problems at all. I'll just see if I can Google it. .com. Ah, there it is. Okay, I'm going to post a link which gives you some of the South African clubs here in Australia. Okay. I don't know if all the links work, but if you take this link, you'll find a number of clubs looking after South Africans in Australia. There you go. It certainly is, Quentin. If you get a retirement visa, Shell, I think you can actually stay here. You can actually stay here permanently. You're very welcome, Peter. Yeah, Raul, that you can do. Basically, the process is you've got to have a family member who is a citizen of Australia. And if they're currently living in South Africa, what would have to happen is they'd have to go through the point system, be assessed, and then come into Australia. They're looking at changing the migration laws from you being here for 2 years before you can become an Australian citizen to 5 years, which is a huge impediment on this type of visa, a family visa, because then if someone is coming into Australia, you've got to wait the 5 years, then they can become the Australian citizen. Only then can you then apply for a parent visa or a family visa for other members of the family. So family sponsorship is becoming harder. Wow, is that what happened, Vanessa? Yeah, a couple of people said that, Mike, about Panama. Irania's got its own money, hasn't it? Um, I'm not sure if it can be a cousin. Look, I'll just put a link to a video that I had on here where you can actually contact an immigration expert and just ask that question, Raul. Let me just find that video for you, okay? Just give me a second. Okay, this one's easier to find. Okay. Here we go. Have a look at this, Raul. Below the video, you will find the links, okay? You can contact this guy directly. There you go. You're very welcome. You know what I really think South Africans who want to stay in South Africa should do, Vanessa? I think that you should form an alliance with, and I've said this in other videos, with the Griqua people, which are basically the coloured people, because they do have very good land claims over the Free State and Griqua Land West. That land was basically stolen from them. Now, if the farmers there, and I've discussed this in another video where I set out the detail, if the farmers there entered into an arrangement where the Griqua got their lands back as tribal lands, and the Griquas then agreed to lease the farms back to the farmers on 99-year leases, there's no way the South African government could actually expropriate that land without compensation. Yeah, that's right. Go on. Quentin, I think it's $1 million, but if you go to that link that I posted a couple of minutes ago, the YouTube link, and go and have a look at the links in my comments directly below the video, you'll see people you can contact and discuss that directly, immigration experts, and discuss that directly with them. Yeah, Vanessa, what I'm hearing is there are very few South Africans who haven't had a member of their family or a friend, a close friend, who hasn't been impacted directly by the violence in South Africa today. I don't know. I'll have to check that up, Dawn. I'm not sure. You're very welcome, Vanessa. And please remember to subscribe, guys, because that way, and like, and that way we can grow this channel. And that way you'll be alerted whenever I put a video up. Is that what you've read, Shell? Well, that's not too bad. Look, I've got to tell you that the farming areas, there is so much land available, for purchase, and we've got a very, very strong banking system here. It's not like South Africa where the banks are now starting to become a bit iffy. Yeah, that's exactly right, Chester. And the two groups could work together, and I think that they could do something. Okay, cool. Raoul, no. No. Look, I get the odd African who sort of says, "Oh, you got your apartheid flag," but I grew up under that flag, and I don't see it as an apartheid flag. It's part of the history of South Africa, and I'm quite happy to wear it, or have it up behind me. It's part of my history. As far as Australians, as I said earlier, Australians like South Africans. South Africans are very much part of the Australian community. Yes, they do tend to have their own clubs and stick together, and they even barbecue and praat die taal, speak Afrikaans, and there's a lot of community things that they do. Yeah, that's dangerous, Vanessa, because you reach a pivotal point where it's too late, and if you don't have a plan B, and they come knocking at your door, you've got no choices. Is that true, Hart? Well, I'm very proud to have it in my office because it is part of my history. No, it isn't an apartheid flag because it predated apartheid by many, many years, and it's a flag under which our soldiers fought two world wars. You know. It is part of the history, Dawn, and I think what's happening in America is a tragedy. They're even now pulling down some of those huge statues and destroying them because they see the people who they represent as being racist. Okay, question, Mike. I put a link up earlier. If you have a look at that and contact that migration fellow, he might be able to give you some pointers. Wow. Oh, that's nice, Shireen. Yeah, look, we do have a lovely climate here in Brisbane, and it's a very relaxed city. We don't have violence is unheard of here. I don't worry about locking my door for my house, anything like. Yeah, exactly right, Don. Yeah, yeah. The UK is becoming a really chockers place, isn't it, Chester? That's sad, Shireen. Well, Mike, I think it's different because, you know, you're on a steep descent. You know, you're moving towards chaos. Yeah, that's true, Raoul. We're very lucky in Australia. Yeah. Can you imagine what Malema's going to do if he becomes the president? Wow. That's awful, Shireen. Oh, of course you'd say that, Vanessa. Yeah. Malema apparently is quite a small man. I think he's only about 5'4" tall. Someone was saying he's quite a, and he looks pretty inconsequential, but he's got a huge mouth. Yeah, I'm sure they would, Chester. Yeah, that's exactly right, Shell. Well, I think there's going to be a civil war between the tribes. I think the Zulu and the Xhosa are going to, you know, start attacking each other. I think that's what's going to happen as things get worse. And I think that I feel that KwaZulu and Natal will try and set up a separate state outside South Africa. So having said that, I mean, KwaZulu Natal could be another option for elderly South Africans who are unable to leave, you know, because I think that a Zulu kingdom would have a lot more stability than the mess that the rest of South Africa is going to be. Yeah, Vanessa, it's right about Donald Trump. The swamp is certainly going after him, that's for sure. Isn't it incredible how Hillary Clinton can get away with murder, absolute murder, whereas Donald Trump is attacked in the way he has been? Yeah, that's what's going to happen, Raul. No, Vanessa, it's every Sunday night. Um, what happens is that I pick a topic, like I did today, and 8 p.m. Johannesburg time on Sunday nights I have this. Now, Shell, that's a really interesting point. Shell says, what do you think of Fiji? Now, I happen to know a lot about Fiji because I ran a village homestay business there for 10 years to help the villagers, you know, earn income. Now, with Fiji, I'll make some inquiries and see what I can find out, because I think the bar will be lower in Fiji, and the beauty about Fiji, and I referred to this in an earlier video, is that you can lease land. You don't buy land in Fiji. The actual villagers, or the Fijian, indigenous Fijians actually own the whole of Fiji. But they freely give out 99-year leases, so you can actually develop a piece of land. Crops grow there beautifully. The weather there is amazing. I mean, it's sort of like always between about 15 and 25 degrees Celsius. No, Carl, not some of the little islands are, yeah, but Fiji is made up of about 1,000 islands. Some of them are so beautiful. But the main islands like Viti Levu and places like Nandi and other big towns, I mean, there's no problem there. Yeah, well, China has taken over the port in Australia, in Darwin as well. I mean, they're going after all these utilities where they can actually control the ports. So it's not just Fiji that has the Chinese. Yeah, Mike, you're absolutely right there. Yeah, I heard that. Wow, that's terrible, Darby. Yeah, I've got friends who live in KwaZulu-Natal, and they tell me that it's not good. But if the if KwaZulu-Natal did break off and become an independent state, it might be the only option to escape the chaos that's going to happen in the rest of South Africa. I think there will be chaos there. Or move back to Zimbabwe. I mean, that's another option, because Zimbabwe now, apparently they're wanting the white farmers to come back. They've realized the error of their ways, and they're saying, please come back and look after our farms. Oh, that's terrible, Vanessa. Yeah. Yeah, Zoom is from that area, yeah. I would be making a move now, Vanessa. I wouldn't be hanging around. The trouble is that when the wheels fall off, it'll be too late. And I really do think some country, and hopefully it'll be Australia, will just open up the borders and say, look, you can come here, but the Greens are the issue. Political side. Yeah, they have, Shireen. Yeah, I agree. hmm Yeah, I was in Durban a few years ago, and I was shocked at some of those tall apartments on the beachfront, which are just burnt out, and they've got squatters in them. They're just shocking. There used to be million-rand apartments way back then. It's just gone crazy in Durban. Yeah, Quentin, that is, you're right. And the problem is that when I well, when someone talks publicly about helping the white farmers, the Greens immediately say, well, look, they're in the same boat as everyone in Africa, so if we're going to bring in the whites, we've got to bring in the Africans as well. What they don't say is that the whites aren't killing the Africans and stealing, etc., but the Africans are killing the whites, so it is a racial crime. Morrison, Scott Morrison, our new Prime Minister, Vanessa. I think he's got a hell of a lot on his plate right now because there's a lot of political stuff going on that is more important to him and his career. But I don't think anything's going to change as far as getting a visa from Australia is concerned, and I think the opportunities are better now than if a Labour Party gets in next year. Yeah, I would say so, Glenn. Yeah, I can believe that, Mike. Yeah, 50% of the population there is not South African. I mean, there's a huge inflow of illegals. Oh, I'll tell you an interesting story. Do any of you know about the Durban Club? You know, that sort of upmarket colonial club that there was once a 20-year waiting list to get into it? And it's right on the, what do they call it, that sort of beautiful strip near the port. Beautiful old building, the Durban Club. And apparently, it was sold to a, well, well, not apparently, it was sold to a Zimbabwean doctor who lives in the US. And apparently the person who actually owns it is Robert Mugabe. That's what I heard from the members of the Durban Club. Yeah, exactly, Dawn. I reckon Mugabe's got property all over the place in other people's names or in companies or whatever. Yeah, Zambia is a very good option, apparently, Darby. There are actually quite a few YouTube clips that you can, if you search on farming in Zambia on YouTube, you'll actually see clips of farmers who've moved from South Africa and Zimbabwe into Zambia. Yeah, that's the one, Mike. Yeah, the Durban Club, now owned by Robert Mugabe. Yeah, it has. In fact, if you go into the Durban Club, if you live in Durban, go into the Durban Club, and you'll see that a large section of it has been sort of shut off, which is the old Durban Club that still operates on the first floor. But the rest of the building is now controlled by this Zimbabwean doctor. And there's a photo of her on the stairs as you go up. I think, Glenn, it'll happen fast. I think it'll, things will just break down. The Zulus in KwaZulu-Natal, in the Chigela Valley, they often have faction fights, and this is how violent they can be. What happens is they go home for Christmas, and someone's had a disagreement with someone in a village nearby, and late at night, the other village will get their pangas and their knobkerries, and they'll go and slaughter everybody else in that other village, and then they'll come home. And that's happening Zulu on Zulu. It's really violent in the Chigela Valley. I lived in a place called Greytown when I was in my 20s, and we'd often hear the helicopters going over during Christmas. And my mother worked for the mayor, and the next day the report would come in that there'd been a faction fight and 200 Africans had been killed by a neighboring village, and no one seemed to do anything about it, you know. Yeah, I think Malema is going to be a bit of a powder keg, Shell. Apparently he owns quite a few houses now in South Africa, including one in Sandton. No, Dempsey, no, it's not. If you've got a great business or money, yeah, easy to come in then. Yeah, Vanessa, that's a good point. The trouble with fake news and the lefty media is that they are covering up what's going on in South Africa. They're never talking about the plight of the white farmers, so most people in the world are not aware about it. I'll be right back. Nature calls. What's happening, Quentin? My comments have been what? Well, I'm not removing them. I don't know why they've been. Are you using bad language or something like that? Because the YouTube system, if you use four-lettered words and things like that, it actually just blocks them. I'm not touching them, but I would prefer if no one uses those sort of words here. Yeah. Here's Chell. Um, okay, New Zealand. Look, if you get permanent residency in Australia or New Zealand, because of the agreement they have, you can settle in either country. So it's quite a useful residency to have. Yeah, they will, Dawn. Yeah, once they start blocking off streets, and they start putting on tires and stuff like that, it's going to be terrible. The trouble with the farms, and I guess farmers here would know this in South Africa, is that you've got to leave the security of your fenced-off house from time to time to farm, and that's often when they attack, when you're actually outside. I'm not sure why, Sharon. Just try and post that message again. I'm haven't blocked anyone. In fact, message that was just sent, which said referred to black people will die. Many black people will die. It came up with a show or hide option, and I just said show. Hey, there you go. Now, Bok Graham has used a four-letter word, which I'm going to hide. Okay, Bok? I see that message, Quentin. Look, no. I think what might actually be the problem is that if you do over 200 letters, the message won't go. So you'll see just below the message it says 0 of 200, and then as you type, you'll see that number changes. If you go over the 200, your message can't go. So you always keep messages below 200 letters. I don't think so, Quentin. I don't think they'll do that. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, if you go over 200, it won't let it send it. Hi, Swearum. Good to see you here. Yeah, we've got a lot of people participating here. We've got about 50 people still in the stream, which is why I'm just leaving it on so that people can chat and discuss things. Shell, I've got a video which I can point you to where I actually went to a hobby farm a few weeks ago, and they got hundreds of cattle, and there's, of course, cow manure everywhere. I never saw one fly, but that's in Queensland. However, in Western Australia, yeah, you need corks on your hat, and you need a hand waving the whole time because there are lots of flies in WA. That's one of the, and WA is just sand. Well, Perth is just built on sand. Givy, I've got a couple of videos about Russia. If you have a look at my videos, you'll be able to have a look about what's going on with South African farmers moving to Russia. That's what I'm trying to. That's my objective, Glenn, is to try and do that. Yeah, it's only around summer, but my God, they're bad in Perth. So for all those watching, just a reminder that every Sunday night at 8 p.m. Johannesburg time, I hold this live stream. So feel free to come and join in. How the live stream works is that I discuss a particular topic for a while, and then we go to the side chat, and then we discuss things here. Good night, Vanessa. Thank you for participating. See you next Sunday. Yeah, I agree, Shireen. I think the area that they're looking at is right in the southern part of Russia. Yeah. You're very welcome, Chester. Yeah, I agree. I agree, Dimsha. Take care, Darby. Thanks for participating. Hope to see you next Sunday. That's exactly right, Mike. Take care, Shireen. Absolutely, Quentin. Yeah. Look, I'm just going to post that link again for you because you can talk to an immigration expert in in Australia. He actually operates out of Queensland. Here we are. I'll send you the link. Okay. Have a look at the comments directly below this video, Quentin, and contact this guy and see what your chances are. There you go. Take care, Glenn. Thanks for participating. See you next Sunday. Take care, Quentin. Thanks for participating. See you next Sunday. Okay, guys, the side chat is slowing down a bit now, so I might wrap this up in a few minutes, unless there are things you want to discuss. And please do watch the videos I post regularly, which means you should subscribe. And be kept informed when I post one. Yeah, it is. Dimsha, if you've got a innovative idea that can be turned into a good business, and I should mention here that you don't need any capital. What they do is they've got a special area that they will put your business. This is if you get approved. You get a temporary visa while you develop the business, and once it's developed, you get a permanent visa for your family and whatever. Take care, Tobacco Row. So, just getting back to this visa, the special entrepreneurial visa, they will actually get another business to help you. So you don't have to have cash, you just have to have the idea. So what you do is you partner with another business with your idea so that you can actually get it happening. I mean, that's what how the thing works. But I think if you have enough capital, you can then certainly set it up by yourself. But if you don't, you can then partner with someone. Wow. Ramaphosa's got a few buffalo, huh? Troll, I've got a video about Russia. If you look through my videos, you'll see one there which specifically addresses that. Regarding that visa, Dimsha? Yeah, look, I'll give you the link to the video which I've produced on that, and then below that video you'll see the links to contact the South Australian government. So what I suggest you do is, if you've got an idea, I would contact the South Australian government and ask them who you should speak to directly, and they'll get back to you, and you can start emailing whoever it is. Okay. care, Swearum. Thanks for popping in. Don't forget, next Sunday, 8 p.m, we'll be doing another live stream. All right, guys, I'm going to call it a morning. Daylight has broken here, and it's getting late for those in South Africa. But thank you for participating. And I hope to see you all next Sunday. Take care. You're very welcome, Dimsha. Take care, Carl. Take care, Shell. Take care, everybody else is here. Hope you have a lovely week. Bye.